Hello, everyone. This is Jim Sporer with ISSIP, the International Society of Service Innovation Professionals. It's my pleasure to be talking to Kartik Gada. Kartik and I have known each other for quite a while. I remember when Kartik gave his Google talk and invited me to come over. I was very grateful for that. And I've been a huge what Kartik has done with his third millennium economics, and Kartik, in a minute, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and tell us what third millennium economics and how you see the transformation of the financial sector coming. Kartik is a CFO of startups. He's one of the people who's really carefully thought about accelerating change across every aspect of business and society. And I think, your book, The Atom, which has been rebranded to Third Millennium Economics, it really is required reading for everybody in the ISIP community. And I hope, this interview and being part of this panel will get a few more people out there to read your book and maybe subscribe to your YouTube channel, which I think has over 2,000 followers now. Congratulations on that. So, Kartik, could you just introduce yourself to the ISIP community? Oh, and congratulations, you're going to be one of our new ISIP ambassadors. So, congratulations on that as well. But please introduce yourself.
Yes, thanks, Jim. I've known Jim for 8 years, as he said, and I know a couple of the others in the ISIP community as well. I've generally been in technology for 25 years, but especially the most disruptive technologies, primarily artificial intelligence, and just even in AI, I go back 11 years on that. I've been writing about the economics of disruptive technology, first on a text blog starting 2006, so 18 years ago, migrating over to video on YouTube now. And I was surprised how little there was written about accelerating economic progress, economics of technology such as software, where demand being unlimited can be met with supply immediately. You don't have to worry about shipping and stocking and running out of supply and the price rising because there's a shortage and things like that. And how those types of principles converge to a larger and larger percentage of the economy. And this is manifested in what we see now, accelerating stock market gains, especially in tech companies, improving economic progress where possible, but also how old structures and paradigms of government, such as taxation, central banks, and all that, really have to be rethought because those are built around assumptions that are 50 to 70 years out of date. And conveniently, the 21st century, began just 23 years ago or so. And so my writing is now around the concept of third millennium economics as opposed to old school economics, second millennium economics, where you had shortages of supply and materially intensive economic progress and assumptions that if there was a labor shortage, then prices would have to rise and things like that. A lot of which is not true, and mostly in a good way in terms of what can exponentially improve not just well-being, but reduce poverty, reduce barriers to entry of, say, minimum viable businesses, faster feedback cycles between economic growth and more productization, all of the above.
Right. And I think, thank you. And I think, you have one video out there about how when you were a student and you had a calculator that had like a solar collector on the calculator, I think in the early 80s, that really got you thinking about, okay, if a solar panel gets better at just, some small percentage every year, but if you compound that year over year over year, within 40 years, you cross this amazing barrier. And so you were thinking about accelerating change and exponential change. But how did you, um, you know, how did you see that, 3% of the economy or going to 4% is part of this kind of new economy? Could you explain third millennium economics a little bit more to us so we understand how you measure, what part of the economy is accelerating the fastest in improvement?
Absolutely. So the story of the solar calculator, that was from when I was 10 years old, 1984, and I'd never seen something like that before. That's something that could have a battery entirely charged by solar. You didn't have to replace a battery or anything in that. So that just got me thinking about exponential technology. And I saw that computers were getting better and better. Video games were getting better in their graphics resolutions, even in the 80s, and I was a kid. But then going further, I first wrote a draft of a book which never got published, and I'm glad it didn't because it's not as good as the subsequent work. In around 2002 or three, when I was saying, "Hey, everyone's talking about Moore's law and how even storage hard drives are getting cheaper for the same cost, but nobody is rolling that up to, well, what does that mean for the total economy? This is
Right.
some percentage of everyone's consumption." And around 2000 was 0.5%, but that percentage of the economy keeps rising. It became 1% around 2008 by my estimation, 2% by 2016, 3% by 2021, 22, and now 2024, maybe as much as approaching 4%. And that's how it manifests that we see more technology in things that did not have technology before. We had incandescent bulbs that are LED bulbs now. We have electric vehicles improving at 6 or 7% a year battery density versus internal combustion engine, which was a 1% a year improving thing. We have these Zoom video conferences now, which did not exist some years prior and were not widespread and normalized as a practice. So greater technological diffusion into all economic activities, and I quantify that as a percentage, which then means it distorts all of the economic statistics, even the old classical ones that are not accounting for technology. And that's the thesis of third millennium economics.
Yeah, and I think, for folks who haven't read your book yet, which I encourage them to do, you can think of like how many things are getting more digital or have computation associated with them, because if the computation is getting cheaper exponentially, then the more things that are dependent on that digital infrastructure, like, for example, cars now have the ability to sense and maybe become self-driving. So everything that becomes more digital can be on an accelerating improvement curve, lowering cost and accelerating entrepreneurship. And
Yeah, we
so,
have exponential improvement in capacity, dematerialization. So even calculators, which used to be standalone devices, are now just an app in everyone's phone and PC. So it has no material weight at all. And you know that everyone has a calculator and calculator can never break. And the same with so many other things. That's just having this video conference. It's not racking up thousands of dollars of electricity bill anymore, as such a thing hypothetically could have in the past, which is why it was not a mass market technology 25 years ago. All of the above represent byproducts of exponential technological change, which then become components of new businesses, processes, activities.
right, right. Now let's zoom in maybe on the financial sector, although as you've said, it's all connected. How do if you were gonna, if we were 10 years in the future and we were looking at exponential improvements in banking or insurance or investing in the financial sector, what measures do you think we might want to have looked at to see this exponential improvement?
The best measure is a stock market index that is broad-based and specifically one that is high technology. So the NASDAQ 100 is the best index. The
Mhm.
S&P 500 is a superset of the NASDAQ 100, and that is a good way to account for, say, energy companies as well, which don't reside in the NASDAQ. But NASDAQ would be the purest, but S&P 500 would be the broadest. Since we see a smooth exponential gradient and apparent acceleration in that, that is evidence of accelerating technological change. So it's not just that happens to be NVIDIA as the hottest company in the world right now, but other companies continue to incorporate technologies into greater earnings and greater acceleration of their product cycle, which rolls up to the total economy, more high-paying jobs, more tax revenue generated, and so forth. So that is one of the purest examples of accelerating rate of change. Now you have to look at this worldwide. These are US indices, but all the technology market cap is in US companies. So it is reflective of worldwide technological progress to a greater degree than even US GDP or something like that. So those indicators are ones. Now, a lot of people don't have enough assets to be in the stock market, but we can similarly see poverty reduction statistics, which are very robust and go back a couple of centuries. We went from 94% poverty in 1820 to 72% poverty even as recently as 1960. Okay, so close to modern times, to now under 10% poverty in the world today under a fixed standard of poverty.
Hmm.
People don't realize that's true because the definition of poverty keeps rising, being poor now means not having a good smartphone or something, whereas even the richest person in the world did not have a smartphone 30 years ago. But if you take absolute standards such as life expectancy, calories consumed, education, literacy, things like that, we've gone from 94% poverty, which was true for thousands of years, up to 1820 AD. There's no point even going further back to 1820 AD because it was almost total poverty, down to under 10%. One thing I like to point out, which shocks people, but as you think about it, you'll see, that this is true, is that half of all economic progress that has ever occurred for all of humanity, half, has occurred in the 21st century itself.
Wow. So the
And that's
third.
true. Yeah. And the next doubling is going to take even less time. There'll be a time, 10, 12, 14 years from now where we say half of all economic progress that ever happened after 2024.
Great.
And it'll seem normal. There'll still be people complaining and whining about poverty, but we'll also know that this is true as well. Things that cost a tremendous amount, like $6,000 high-end PC today, will be close to free in 12 to 14 years' time, just through continuation of these well-established technological trends that we're all familiar with.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to make sure when I post this video to the ISSIP YouTube, I include a link to your book, which is online. Anybody can read it. Also, if people want to go out to Amazon and buy it from Business Expert Press on Amazon, they can get that copy. I'll also include a link to folks if they want to subscribe to your YouTube channel. And thank you very much, Kartik Gada, for this quick interview, and look forward to talking to you next Monday. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.